Okay, yes, now I'm ready.
Okay. Well, then, let me mentally get ready for the next 45 minutes.
45 minutes.
Okay. I'm ready.
What?
What?
Okay.
God, fucking respect my process, Matt. Jesus Christ.
No, it's good. It's good.
When did you become such an asshole?
It's just you know.
All right, let's do it. Hello and welcome to Flanagan's Wake, a Doof Media podcast digging up the corpse of Mike Flanagan to steal his baseball glove. My name is Scott Daly, and I am your host. And joining me, as always, he gives you the measles the old-fashioned way. It's Matt Freeman. How's it going today, Matt?
Oh, it's going well. Could you hold this handkerchief for me for a second while I do something?
Sure.
Here.
Yeah. Why would a person ever hold a handkerchief for another person? That seems like a bad idea.
That's one of those like unspoken faux pas where like no one has ever told me you don't ask a person to hold your handkerchief, but it's because it's like so obvious that you don't even need to say it.
You know, in like old movies where people would just give each other handkerchiefs all the time? It's like, here, your nose is running. Take my handkerchief.
Who knows what that handkerchief has been through?
Do they not know what germs are?
Maybe they don't. I don't know. I forget when that was discovered. Somewhere between 1800 and 1950, I assume.
Sure. I think most things were discovered then.
No, probably
not all,
before.
But most.
No, before 1800, right?
Germs?
I don't know.
Well, I think we have to answer this question before we go any further on this podcast. When were germs discovered?
I know they had microscopes that were reasonably functional in like the 1600s.
Dutch scientist Antony van Leeuwenhoek in the late 17th century, 1676, using a simple microscope. He observed and described microscopic organisms, including bacteria, protozoa, and yeast. There we go. Everybody learned something important today that has everything to do with Stephen King's Dr. Sleep.
Well, it's about measles, and measles is the main topic of today's conversation.
That is true. Measles. This week on the show, Stephen King's Dr. Sleep continues as we discuss chapters 10 through 12 of Dr. Sleep, including, of course, the chapter entirely on the measles virus and how it works. We have a lot of stuff happening in this one, Matt. There's 70 something pages, but the plot moves pretty fast here. We have characters linking up with other characters. We have plans forming. We have true knots traveling across the country to hunt down the magical Abra. It's a lot. It's a lot. What are you thinking of it? How are you enjoying the book in this week's reading?
Yeah, this is kind of that middle part of the story that now that we've read a bunch of King novels, and I think a bunch of novels outside of King, it's like you bring all the quartet members together. You have fully set the table. You are raising the sense of urgency. Like one thing I noticed in this week's reading is not only are we raising the sense of urgency for our main characters because they come to understand that the True Knot has indeed found Abra and is moving toward her, but also there's urgency for the True Knot characters because they now realize, there's kind of a ticking clock element for them too. Not only are they running out of steam, which was already a problem they were facing, but it's even more urgent because now there's this virus that's apparently infecting them, and it just elevates this sense of volatility to the situation, which I think is what you want in a story like this, where you don't you no longer know exactly what will happen, but you know that everyone is desperate, and really we're just pulling back that bowstring in readiness for the coming climax.
I agree. I think this is not my favorite series of chapters of the story. and I think there's a little bit of some clunkiness that I think we'll get into, some stuff that I don't love in this
Mhm.
week's reading. But I think for the most part, what I'm really enjoying this time around is the characters. I'm really loving all these characters. I'm in love with little Abra. I'm really enjoying Dan. I guess, how do you feel about the True Knot right now is the question I have. Like, I mean, we all know that Rebecca Ferguson plays Rose the Hat, and so therefore she is the most important character in the movie, and we love her and
Right.
worship her, and would murder a small baseball playing child for her. But in the book, how are you feeling about Rose? How are you feeling about the True Knot in general? Are you into these guys? Are you into them as characters? What are you thinking?
Yeah, well, interesting. I don't know if I quite thought about it that way because they're the antagonists and we're kind of supposed to hate them, but also at the same time, King is very deliberately making us not just 100% fully hate them.
Sure.
He's written characters all along the spectrum of monstrosity, right? He's written characters who we just uncomplicatedly loathe and we want nothing good to happen to them and we're purely happy and relieved when they die. And then we've written much more complicated villains where um we're probably still happier relatively to see them die, but like because of the threat they posed, but like they were sympathetic on some level. Maybe they had a really tragic backstory, or they were messed up for reasons outside of their control.
Sure.
And this is hitting an interesting spot on that spectrum where it's not like we really have sympathy for the True Knot. It's not like we've gotten like the sob story of Rose the Hat's youth. But what we have got is we've seen them act genuinely kindly to each other in a way where it's really not just like instrumental,
Hmm.
mercenary. It's actually the way you come to see it, or the way I've come to see it, is like they have empathy, but they only have empathy for those who they consider to be real people, which is the True Knot, and everyone
Yeah.
else is not real people.
Yeah. Yeah. They consider humans cattle,
Mhm.
essentially.
Yeah,
They almost said as much. I mean, the idea
yeah,
of milking Abra is like, what we're doing is not monstrous in this case because they're not real. They're not they're not us.
yeah.
Yeah, I think you're right. It is really interesting. Obviously, I agree with you. We're not supposed to like love the True Knot. We're not supposed to be like, oh, these guys, they're just a little misunderstood. They're monsters. They're clearly monsters. We witness them murder someone. They are plotting to capture, detain, and slowly milk Abra over the course of many years. There's no redeeming qualities there. But I do agree with you that by cutting back to them as often as this book is doing, we are giving them interiority. We are, as you said, like we are defining the stakes for them. We are defining a ticking clock for them. We are defining the I mean, in these chapters, Grandpa Flick dies, and that is not something that they just go, oh shucks, he died, and that means I'm worried about me and my future. No, they're sad because someone in their family died. And that is certainly more complicated than just your kind of basic like monster
Yeah.
villain.
Yeah, I think it gives them a little bit more of a human kind of interiority for us to anchor onto. I keep saying them. I mean, really, we only see Rose the Hat's point of view, with
Sure.
a couple minor exceptions. I guess we
There's a
see,
little crow, there's a
yeah,
little
little crow in there.
berry.
Yeah, yeah, that's
Yeah.
true. That's true.
But I think for the most part you're correct. Yeah. All right. Well, that was great. I'm glad you're appreciating them. I think I'll hold some of the things I want to say for different scenes as we get into them. But great introductory conversation. Let's get into chapter 10.
Cool.
This chapter is titled Glass Ornaments. And our chapter begins by once again, and I think I only noticed this because the first chapter of our reading last week, and then again, the first chapter of reading this week, is focusing on Abra's great grandmother.
Hmm.
Um, in that one, it's focusing on her getting up in the middle of the night, falling, breaking her hip, and then discovering she has cancer. In this one, this is her getting up in the middle of the night and falling once again and shattering her arm. I really love what you said last week about how the book is using her to reflect this idea of growing old and dying, this kind of the natural order of things, and reflecting that on the True Knot and what they're doing by artificially and monstrously prolonging their life. And we talked about her, I think last week we talked about her like dying gracefully, right? And this idea of the people in the hospice die, greet their death in a graceful manner. Um, and actually we'll connect Cachetta to them even more because we're going to see her moved into that very hospice, right? During this week's reading. But what I like about this part at the beginning here is this idea that perhaps death is natural, perhaps death is necessary, and the methods that people do to prolong their life, at least in the world of this book, are monstrous. But maybe we spoke too soon about the word graceful, right? Because death is terrible sometimes. And that's what we see with this opening bit here.
I totally agree. In fact, even as I said what I said last week, I like the word felt wrong in my mouth in terms of like what King is doing, because he's not trying to say, death is easy and death, people accept their death and there's a beauty to that. It's like, no. Like the people who Dan is helping are able to get there because he's helping them, and that has its own beauty to it. But like the process of being extremely old and dying slowly just sucks. It is no fun at all for anyone involved. The book isn't pretending that it is. The book isn't pretending that like, the right way to die is to just be super stoic about it, just be totally fine. And when you are in incredible suffering, just content yourself that that's the right way to do it and that it's natural, so it's okay. It's like no. I mean, we didn't say that. I'm being a little hard on my past self, but like it's the book is now like really hammering in the idea that like, you even start, it reminds you like this is what the True Knot is avoiding.
Yeah.
That they're avoiding decrepitude and pain and ultimately just, ceasing to exist or, moving on to whatever's next. Interesting question. It's unclear what the True Knot believes about the nature of the afterlife, but that's a separate thing.
Sure. Yeah.
It's a very stark and painful view on the nature of growing old and dying. And I think another thing we're doing just in the middle of all this, you just said it, is we're setting up the idea that she's going to the hospice where Dan works. We know the way books work. She's going to meet Dan. Dan is going to help her die. And on some level, we want to see these characters meet because I really love both of these characters.
Yeah. Yeah, no, thank you for actually verbalizing that, because yes, that is what we are setting up here clearly. But I want to zoom in on this writing in this part, because like to set up what's actually happening here. Lucy, the beginning of the chapter has Lucy call her husband distraught because her grandmother rather, fell and shattered her left arm, like completely shattered it, screaming her bloody head off. And we get this very long couple of paragraphs that I want to read here because I think this writing is exquisite, and I think it definitively nails exactly what you and I are talking about here. So let me read this real quick and we can talk about it a little more. Lucia Stone knew that she could never tell him how awful it had really been. What a stinking revelation it had been. You thought you understood the basic fact. Woman grows old, woman grows feeble, woman dies. And then you discover there was quite a lot more to it. You found out that when you found that out when you found the woman who had written some of the greatest poetry of her generation lying in a puddle of her own piss, shrieking at her granddaughter to make the pain stop, make it stop. Oh, Madre de Cristo, make it stop. When you saw the formerly smooth forearm twisted like a wash rag and heard the poet call it a cunting thing and then wished herself dead so the hurting would stop. Could you tell your husband how you were still half asleep and frozen with the fear that anything you did would be the wrong thing? Could you tell him that she scratched your face when you tried to move her and howled like a dog that had been run over in the street? Could you explain what it was like to leave your beloved grandmother sprawled on the floor while you dialed 911 and then sat beside her waiting for the ambulance, making her drink oxycodone dissolved in water through a bendy straw? How the ambulance didn't come, and you thought of that Gordon Lightfoot song, The Wreck of the Edmund Fitzgerald, the one that asks if anyone knows where the love of God goes when the waves turn the minutes to hours. The waves rolling over Momo were waves of pain, and she was foundering, and they just kept coming. Just like, holy shit, man. Just beautiful, beautiful writing. Just like we just talked about what the book is doing here, and then King literally just talked about what the book is doing here, but in this beautiful, beautiful, tragic writing. I really love this. We talk about a person facing death, but I also think this is about specifically about the people around them facing death, right? Um, and this is the interesting thing that Danny can be for people. Like a lot of people have a very hard time with their loved ones dying for obvious reasons, right? And being that kind of comforting person for them in those moments is very, very difficult for people. It is very hard to see someone you love, especially someone that was kind of this beacon of strength in your life, grow old and get frail and break. And that is what's happening to Lucy right now. Is that she's experiencing this, and it again really highlights Dan as this almost superhero in the story of that he, as you said, we're being set up that he is going to swoop in, and when her time comes, he is going to be there to guide her to whatever's next, in a very calm, graceful, beautiful way.
Mhm.
And it's like, man, I wish we all got a got a Dan Torrance guiding us to whatever comes after this life.
Yeah. I think one thing also that's kind of framed here is that death really is a reprieve from that kind of suffering. I mean, that's
Yeah.
that we talked at the beginning of the book more about the idea of a hospice and what a hospice is. And I was kind of like flippant. I was just trying to be funny, and I kind of regret that I said something like dumb that I was just like that's I don't know. I made a joke that I felt didn't land, which always you listen to it later and you're like, you idiot. But
I don't
like
even remember this, so
yeah, I know.
it didn't affect me.
I'm sure no one else did either. Like the point is like a hospice is a place where we're no longer trying to fix what's wrong. We're just trying to make it so that we ease the transition and minimize pain.
Yeah.
And there's um there's nobility in that because the pain can be enormous. The pain can be so horrible, and the suffering like it's almost if you haven't seen it, you almost can't imagine it. Maybe this is one element of Matt's backstory that I don't talk about on the podcast much because I always feel slightly weird about turning other people's pain into content. But when I was in high school, I was doing my confirmation volunteering for Catholicism, um,
Hmm.
and I volunteered at a retirement home, old folks home, whatever you want to call it, for a while, and like I just saw really terrible things, like just
Yeah.
people in real in like manners of physical and mental suffering and anguish that they were not going to recover from. And on one level it was like mildly traumatizing, but on another it's shaped just like I had a very like I think realistic sense of like what growing old and dying actually is,
Mm.
which maybe has to some degree fed into my much memed desire to never die and never grow old. But like it really sucks. And this and I think I kind of admire and respect King for showing how horrible this is, like really showing the suffering that Conchetta is going through here, because it's like, yeah, that's pretty accurate, that's pretty um realistic,
Yeah.
and we should confront that.
Absolutely. I mean, and this is a man who kind of watched his mother. She got cancer, and he watched her waste away and die. He's also writing this in the 2010s, which is almost 15 years ago, but still he's not a spring chicken anymore. He's getting older himself, and I think he's thinking about these things as well. And um it's it, it sucks, man. Like it really like I I did not volunteer in an old folks home like you, but um I've had loved ones in hospice, both at a place and hospice care at their home. And it is, yeah, it is awful. It is truly awful. And it's like, just, I will never forget being by my grandmother's side. Like I think I was there a couple hours before she finally passed, and it's just like watching this person, and like it's one thing to write about how like or to watch stories about how people talk about it. Like you can go, like it's time, that kind of thing. It's such another thing to experience it in person, right? That's just this feeling of that, like death is a reprieve, that like when you get to a certain point in your life, that death is the end of pain, it's the end of suffering, it's the end of all this horrible stuff. And it is release, and it is peace, and it is grace in a lot of ways. It still sucks. It's still the worst possible thing ever. But yeah, it's just this incredibly powerful mix of almost contradictory feelings and emotions. I don't want you to go. I don't want to lose you, but also I know it's time. Yeah, I mean, I think the existence of the True Knot kind of is a flag like stuck in the mud directly opposing this idea. And we'll see that even the horrible things they do, the price they've paid for their soul isn't a reprieve from this for even them, right? We get to see that. And there's a lot of direct comparisons between Grandpa Flick's death in these chapters and this moment with Conchetta. Like, I think literally the make it stop is a direct echo of what Flick is saying to Rose versus what Conchetta here is saying to her granddaughter. So yeah, I mean, there's a lot of really heavy stuff going on in this book for sure. In the middle of this story about a superpowered little girl. I kind of respect it for not just wanting to be one thing, for wanting to be a lot of different things, actually.
Yeah, me too. And I think it's bringing those things together pretty well, honestly.
Yeah. So as we talked about, Lucy decides that Momo needs hospice care, and that she's made the decision, and she's going to talk her grandmother into it. And I love this part where we learned that Abra heard all of this. Basically, she heard this entire conversation, or worse, actually, she felt it. She felt her mother's anguish. This whole thing about like Lucy could never tell her husband, could never make her husband understand what she just went through. Well, your daughter can sense it and feel it. That seems like, once again, like there's a great many powerful things with this power that Abra has, but the curse of it, I think, is really rough too. I love this line. But she had gotten good at putting on happy faces until someone told her out loud it was time to put on a sad one. This kind of existence for Abra, just constantly being inundated with everyone's feelings and emotions and bad news, but the expectation of you is that you don't react that way until they've actually told you. So it's rough. It's really rough.
Yeah, I mean, this is one of those many notes of showing us how much this power has cost her.
Yeah.
And, and how much it cost Danny too. It's just a reminder. We're kind of seeing her become old before her years because of the fact that she's had to endure, this excess of empathy, basically.
Yeah, and we've talked over the last few weeks about like the back and forth of like the True Knot assuming that she would be doing exactly what she's doing here, which is hiding her power, which is having her parents like not talk on, not focus on. And we talked about, hey, Rose, you were wrong. She didn't do that, but we've gotten to the point where she did do that. And I think it is a good thing that by the end of this week's reading, we've kind of gotten her out of that paradigm, that she is able to come clean with her dad in a way that brings us back to, again, is like, no, we are acknowledging that this power exists. We are acknowledging that our daughter has it. And now there is a team surrounding Abra. It is not just her. It is not even just her and Danny. It is a team of people all working to try to keep her safe and try to beat back the forces of evil. And that's really good. That's really good, because I think our villains have a one up on Abra in that, as we'll see throughout these chapters, they kind of know exactly who she is and where she lives, and she doesn't realize that yet. But they don't know about Dan, and they don't know about John and her dad and any of these people.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's true. That's one that's actually a really interesting point, because I think there's kind of one storytelling philosophy that says you want to make your villains really, really strong and scary. And obviously these villains are really strong and scary, but they have weaknesses, and the heroes, like you said, have some of their own advantages. So it's actually sort of an even game, interestingly.
Yeah. Speaking of Abra's dad, though, I did just want to circle back around to David a little bit here. We were, I would say, charitably hard on Dave in last week's episode. And I think the book was inviting us to do this, by the way. I don't think the critiques of him as a father and a person were not coming out of thin air. We talked about the fact that the book is trying to make the Jack Torrance comparisons, and that makes us nervous. But I think David goes through a really interesting transition over the course of these 3 chapters this week, where he goes from this kind of non-present, aloof character to someone that I think we empathize with a little bit more and understand a little bit more. And I think he says something to his wife over the course of this chapter that's just like he's just very empathetic to what she's going through. And then even with Abra, like there's a version of this character perhaps that just would refuse to accept what he's being told, like would adamantly refuse it no matter what. And that's not what happens in this week's reading. That Dave is uncertain about it and obviously very untrusting of these adult men that suddenly come into his house and say, hey, I've been hanging out with your daughter, we got some stuff to tell you. But he eventually does come around on it. And I just wanted to make sure as we begin this week that we give this guy the credit he's due.
Yeah. The way I describe it is he is out of his depth, but he's doing his best. So
yeah, I think that's fair. Yeah. So from here, we swap over to Rose, who is preparing for a day of meditation, itself in preparation for her upcoming hunt of Abra. She's got a do not disturb sign on her door, and it's ignored as Crow and Nut come in with some news. One of their assets in the NSA, what? Has found a new sedative that's clean and will knock Abra out without any chance of ODing or any adverse side effects. Matt, what did you think about this?
I think it's interesting. There's a bunch of interesting stuff here. I mean, the sedative thing is interesting because I feel like there's this recurring beat where we're going to get another beat in a second where like the physicality of humans is being emphasized over and over. I mean, we've got the physicality of humans as these frail glass ornaments that are easy to break, and then we're like, yeah, and then there's like sedatives, and then there's the idea of the true knot being super susceptible to measles.
Mm-hmm.
There's the idea here that Rose has to go through this elaborate meditation ritual where she takes drugs that make her vomit so that she can have a clear stomach so that her digestive processes don't distract her. And again, it's like they're not it's almost like we're really emphasizing that they're not vampires. Like they have living physical bodies that are prone to all of the same stuff our bodies are prone to. They're just a little bit different. And I think that's all great. I also I don't know, I thought it was kind of fun that Rose can get herself into this meditative state where she can do astral projection and all this stuff, but it takes her like hours and hours of meditation and drugs, and Abra and Dan are able to do this same thing in like 5 seconds. So it's just another instance of like the villains are scary, but they're not scary because they're stronger psychically. It's just because there's like more of them and they're more willing to do violence.
Yeah, definitely. And they have this apparatus they've built that keeps them safe. I mean, that's one thing that's like, I think unique about these characters in this story is, these aren't vampires that kind of live in the shadows. These are peoples with billions of dollars and contacts all over government, including at the NSA, that are going to slip them information. They have people that will do drops of mail. They are very cautious. They've survived for as long as they have because they're very cautious. Like when they talk about sending this drug to New England to meet up with the people driving there, they have to send it through multiple locations just to kind of hide the ownership of it and what it's doing. And so like it is, yes, they are like soul-sucking monsters that can manipulate you to feel safe and come into their van, but like that is just like the final beat of this huge apparatus that is so existent in the mundane world. Like, you talked about the physical nature of their bodies, which is very true, but the physical nature of their presence in the world is just like they have billions of dollars. Like that is unique and fascinating.
Yeah.
In a way that I think, it's not that no story has ever had like a villain that has like that kind of apparatus behind them, but like a vampire story, like they don't usually do that. Like you're thinking of Salem's Lot, like they had this legitimate business that they were hiding behind and things like that, but like they're mostly just like creepy dudes living in a house.
Right. Right. And the house that they were living in Salem's Lot was this hellhole, whereas these folks, a lot of energy has been put into the description of their comfortable RVs and the logistics of getting their RVs around the country and
Yeah.
all these other, like you said, like logistical details.
Yeah. It's fascinating. It
Mm.
really is. I also, speaking of that, really love this bit about how the True hate air travel, that this is something to do with their nervous systems, they guess, that they just get sick in the air and they
Mhm.
don't like it. To be fair to them, I get it. Air travel is I hate flying. I hate flying so much. I'm the son of a pilot who has spent almost my entire youth flying as much as we possibly could, and I used to love it, and air travel has caused me to hate it.
Yeah, they've made it worse and worse, and at this point, my nervous system now has the same problem as the True Knot. Maybe I'm of the True Knot.
Did you eat any children lately?
I don't think so.
Good that you don't know that for
I, I,
sure.
I nibbled I
Comforting.
nibbled the baby toes when my kids were babies. Does that count?
Did a little steam come out?
I mean, some kind of gas definitely.
So they agree to send this drug on to the Northeast to be picked up, and then we kind of move on to Grandpa Flick, who we learn here is, quote, no longer holding his fudge. They mean this both literally and metaphorically, that he is incontinent and also starting to cycle.
Yeah.
I also really like this part where Jimmy the Number shows up with an article about a freak earthquake in Anniston, New Hampshire. And so, like, now they had it limited down to maybe one of two areas. And now it's just like, oh, yeah, it's here. That was her. We know the exact street. Cool. Cool. Again, this is talking about the powerful, physical apparatus of these people.
Mhm.
They have Google. It's
Yeah,
terrifying.
they not only have Google, but they're like fairly competent and focused. That's one thing that jumped out to me in this week's reading is as a group, like they're knocking on Rose's door, disrupting her to tell her important information, and it's because they're all diligently working behind the scenes to figure out these things.
Yeah.
Like it's not like she's writing them to come to these answers. They're independently doing their own research to help the team. They're all really good team players, actually. And I was thinking about this, and I actually couldn't make up my mind because part of me thinks, well, it's because they're all, they're part of the True Knot. They're part of this family. They're they're just all aligned because they're that's what they are. That's their identity. That's their group. That's their team. But then I was like, well, I mean, maybe yes, but also they're all addicts and they're all addicted to the same thing, and so they're all very invested in getting that thing. So
Yeah.
I think maybe it's not as simple as just like loyalty to the group. It's like they all know that any extra, if they can shave half an hour off the time that it takes to get their next hit of steam, well, that's fantastic because they get to have their next hit of steam, and that's literally what they live for at this point.
Mm-hmm.
So I don't know. I couldn't decide kind of like what's the ratio of family loyalty versus just like being an addict.
Yeah, I mean, I love that because I think there's this really interesting kind of comparison to AA that we've already talked about, and one thing the book has reminded of us several times is the idea that addicts can be the most deceptive, horrible people at times, right? That like the book has hammered home this idea that like we're all chummy here in our AA meeting, but like these people at their lowest point will lie to your face, will manipulate you, will steal, will cheat, will do whatever they can to get, if they really decide they want it, they're really going to get it. And I think that is a reflection here as well, that and you wonder, I mean, that is a really interesting thing actually, that you could say here, is that they present as this family, this tight-knit community, this knot, but they are all addicts. And how quickly will they turn on each other to get a hit? Right. If we talk, there's a really interesting thing because we're about to talk about this fact that she is going to give a canister of steam to Grandpa Flick, and they say, well, that could be a waste. He's maybe cycle and it's going to do nothing, and we just wasted steam. And they're like, no, this is the right thing to do. We care for this person. And it comes off as this legitimate, kind, compassionate, we want to give this guy some peace moment. But that's in a moment of excess where it's been a good year. They have extra steam. They're not quite as against the wall as they were the last time we saw them. And they've got this Abra shaped meal on the horizon. Like, will the family still be a family when they're standing between each other and their meal?
Yeah. Yeah. I had a similar thought where I was like, is everyone as dedicated to the True Knot as Rose? Like, because we see from within her perspective so much more often, but I feel sometimes this vibe between her and Crow, where it's like Crow is always staying just on the right side of the line of questioning her leadership, never quite challenging her, but maybe sometimes suggesting that she's not doing everything that she could be doing.
Mm-hmm.
And I do wonder, like, despite the fact that, I think in her mind, it's like they're totally copacetic, they're best buds and lovers. I don't know that he necessarily sees her that way, or that he sees the rest of the True Knot that way. Like, maybe for him, the True Knot is a convenient way to ensure that his supply of steam is consistent, but he doesn't really, love Grandpa Flick the way that Rose does.
Yeah, maybe.
It's not that we're told this. It's just I think there's subtle implications around the edges.
Yeah, and then you have people like Snakebite Andy who have been a member for what, a decade, a couple decades, maybe.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Like, how committed to the cause is she versus someone that's been around for hundreds of years?
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. I don't know.
Mm-hmm.
I do think there's a really interesting kind of dichotomy growing, though, of you have people in AA that are addicts that are helping each other not use. And then you have the True Knot, who are a family of addicts, like, enabling each other. And it's like, they're both saying we are the strong group, the strong collective. And, like, I think one of the questions of the novel will be which knot is tighter.
I love that. I love seeing them as like the anti-AA. That's great.
Yeah. So Dan gathers Billy and John, inviting the latter to come with him to Iowa. First, though, he lies and says it's to help with the 12th step call. But when Billy Shine picks up on the lie, he comes clean. He tells John what he and Billy can do about the True and what they're after and what Abra needs them to do. I think this is such a great scene because it's Dan being very, very smart in how he's presenting this information to these people. And I almost said the word manipulating, and that feels overly harsh, but like, he lies on purpose. I just want to get your interpretation of this. Like, he lies on purpose, guessing that Billy will call him out on his lie in order to be able to go to John and be like, you knew I had this thing. So does this guy. It's bigger than me. It's bigger than me and Abra. It's bigger than me, Abra, and Billy. It's this whole big thing. And we need your help.
Yeah, I agree with you. I figured that he lied knowing that Billy would pick up on it, and then this was his artful segue into getting Billy to admit that he has powers, and then basically kicking off the conversation with John, because John knows, but he's sort of in denial about it, or avoids thinking about it, I should say, in the same way that Abra's parents do.
Yeah. But John agrees to go get the glove with Dan, and Billy is put on guard duty. He is sent to keep an eye on the stones and make sure that nothing happens to him.
Mm-hmm.
From here, we cut over to Abra, who is talking to her mom on the phone, listening to what happened, and also trying to kind of send her positive vibes. She doesn't think she can actually, like, magically do this, by the way, but she feels that Dan probably could. I love this quote. She thought he used the part of the Shining to help people in the hospice. If he could really do that, maybe he would help Momo when she got there. That would be good. So I think that's another beat of us kind of moving towards that eventuality where Dan and Conchetta are going to meet, and he's going to help her just like he's done other people. But I really like this introduction of, we've been talking about how Abra is just incredibly powerful, more powerful than Dan, who himself, when he was a child, was incredibly powerful. But I love this idea, and this is kind of more of the the Brandon Sanderson-ification of The Shining in some ways, right? That like we've complicated this thing, and now we've got different parts of it, different. Each individual person has their own kind of unique twist on it, and so Abra has this kind of astral projection part that she can do, and the book is inviting us to understand that Dan has some kind of emotional power, some empathic ability to influence people's emotions, and that is in essence what he is doing as Dr. Sleep. That he sees someone on the threshold on death, and he can go in there and he can just actually calm them down, actually bring them to calmness, bring them to peace, bring them to contentment. And I mean, I think we kind of presumed that was what's happening, but we're basically like stating it out right here.
Yeah, I think I think we described it as a mind meld, where for me it felt more like he was joining with them in a way where he allowed his calm to influence them rather than him like, shooting calm rays at them.
Yeah, right. I don't think he's just going to be like, you're scared.
Yeah.
You're mad.
That's,
I don't think
that's how I read it.
Going to work. Yeah.
I think the clarification we're getting is that Abra cannot do this thing, and that in fact there are like different skills that different people have.
Yeah, I think it also serves to give them both continued purpose in this magic world of this kind of cross world mind melding and powers that we're going to continue to see. Like we have in this chapters, we have Dan halfway across the country, and Abra is able to just like inhabit him. So she has something very, very different from him, but he has something very, very different from her as well. And his thing could end up being useful as well.
Right.
Abra goes to bed after a quick mental chat with Danny about the Iowa plan, and Rose the Hat, after a day of meditation and a little steam, pushes herself back into Abra's head. And what she finds there, Matt, is not just an alarm, it's a trap. For the first time in a great many years, Rose the Hat, once Rose O'Hara from County Antrim in Northern Ireland, was caught completely off guard. Before she could pull her hand out of the drawer, it slammed shut. The pain was enormous. She screamed and jerked backward, but she was held fast. And Matt, as she stands there stuck, Abra appears before her, not as a girl, but as, well, Daenerys from Game of Thrones?
Cool.
Sure.
Yeah.
She's on a horse and lashes out with a lance that I think we're led to believe, if it strikes true, if she was able to actually hit Rose in the head with this lance, it could possibly actually kill her, right? Mm-hmm. Because we see what she does to her hand in her mind physically damages Rose's hand outside of her mind. So yeah, this could have been it. She had just, if Rose hadn't moved out of the way, could have been it.
Yeah. No, it's great. I find it easy to believe that she could have killed her. By the way, I think that the nitpicky asshole part of my brain is glad to see Abra try to kill her and then fail, to show like, okay, it isn't so easy to do that. Because if she hadn't tried, then I would always kind of feel like, why don't the obviously super psychic main characters just go try to psychically kill the bad guys in their sleep, which they probably can do, and then the book is kind of being like, oh, they can't actually. That's
yeah. No, good point. And I think this is a great way of kind of level setting power. Like, obviously, the big thing here is that Rose has completely underestimated this girl. Mm-hmm. That she is considerably more powerful than she thought she was, and that underestimation, like, it punishes her. She gets hurt, but also Abra gets to rifle around in her head. Instead of breaking in and finding information about Abra finds information about Rose and the True Knot. Rose is still, though, able to push her out, right? So it's not as if Abra is this level of power beyond anything to where she can just run rampant through Rose's head and can never be let out. It's like, she still is able to dodge the attack that kills her. She's still able to pull her hand out of the drawer, and she's still able to push Abra out of her head. And so what we have here is underestimation leading to her fucking up, but it's not as if like we still have stakes, I guess is what I'm trying to say. That
Yeah.
like Rose is still extremely powerful, and as we talked about, all the other pieces of the power that the True operates with, we're still nervous for our characters here for
For,
sure.
for sure. Yeah. Well, she's extremely experienced. Like, I think that's the kind of upshot of the scene. Is it is her wiliness and experience that lets her survive. And I
Yeah,
think this is underlined in the next chapter when Dan talks to Abra and realizes, like, while this was kind of a badass moment of triumph, it's like, okay, but Abra doesn't realize the thin ice she's skating on, and like it could have very well gone the other way for her if if Rose had been a little bit more prepared, right?
yeah, for sure. And it is this moment of failure with Rose that, like, I guess we could say the advantage that they had against Rose is kind of gone now. Like
Mm-hmm.
you get the feeling that, okay, she learned she's not going to underestimate this girl again.
Mm-hmm.
But maybe the one thing she doesn't do is I don't think she, out of like embarrassment, doesn't quite let the rest of them know how close to death she was.
Yeah.
And so there's a chance that the raiding party that she's sending east right now is underestimating Abra, and she knows that, but she's not filling them in on it.
Yeah, that's a good point. We've consistently seen this behavior from Rose, even from the beginning when they were short on steam, that she will lie, distort, manipulate the True Knot, even though she does, care about them. She
Yeah.
doesn't really trust them, and her method of leading them is entirely based on deception. Um, and I think that's been a consistent thread, and we're going to see that blow back at some point.
And once again, kind of the anti-Alcoholics Anonymous there, right? The idea of truth being this kind of core tenet of AA, and the thing that Casey has pushed into Danny is that he needs to be honest and truthful about all the things that he did, and that he's struggling with. And in the True Knot, we see this group that's supposed to be bound together through eternity, but that's her leadership style is, I'm not going to let anyone know anything unless I think they need to know.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, I think another reflection of how these two groups operate differently.
Yep.
So our chapter ends with an update on Grandpa Flick. He's dying, and we move right into chapter 11 called. Gosh, I should have looked up what the name, how you actually pronounce the name of this baseball player. What did it say in the audiobook? Do you remember?
I do not remember.
Is it just Tom?
I don't know if it's Tom. I mean, it could be like Thome or Tomei. It could be any number of things.
I literally wrote this down and said I need to look this up later, and then I didn't. This is a real baseball player, so let me look it up. It looks like it's Tomei, so it's Jim Tomei according to Wikipedia. So there we go. So yeah, chapter 11, Tomei 25. We join the next chapter still with the True Knot, picking up right where we left off in Grandpa Flick's smelly bedroom. He's cycling, but Matt, it's not just old age or lack of steam. Turns out he's got the measles, and he caught it from the baseball boy. King actually set this up a few times. I kind of presented them to you and just let you see if you said anything, but like there was I think something like the baseball boy had left them a parting gift, I think he said at the end of one chapter. And then when Dan is talking to Dick Halloran, he says they're empty devils and they're sick and they don't even know it. That's what he was referring to here. But here it is. Bradley Trevor's parents clearly, I guess, are anti-vaxxers and thought that the MMR vaccine is dangerous and did not vaccinate their children, which, by the way, is stupid. Come at if there's any anti-vaxxers listening out there, come on, let's talk. This vaccine is perfectly safe. You should get it for your children. But they didn't, and I guess that's a good thing, right? Because now the True Knot, at least one member of the True Knot, is sick with the measles, and we'll see by the end of the week's reading that he's not going to be the only one.
Yeah, I feel like this is such a classic King way to do this, to muddle together the sacred and the profane and the magical and the mundane, so it all feels like it's part of this lived-in world. It's all integrated. It's all mixed together. You can get measles from magic soul juice. Why not? Of course you can. Why
Sure.
wouldn't you be able to? Right? I don't know. This strikes me as being a very Stephen King thing that like most authors just wouldn't even think of, because it's like, well, that's magic. Magic, not you can't get a virus from magic, obviously.
Yeah.
And it's like, why not?
But we just spent like 10 seconds or 10 minutes talking about how the True are like not human, but are still physical beings,
Right.
that experience things like other physical beings do. They digest, they still have to eat food, they still poop, as Grandpa Flick sees. They get nauseous, they get sick. That's new, obviously, but still. So yeah, I mean, it is kind of silly if you just like break it out and be like, all right, so they caught the measles virus. How did they catch it? Well, they sucked his steamy soul out, and the virus, a piece of the virus was in the steam.
Yeah.
Like a strand of DNA from the rubella virus was in the steam.
Yeah, it's
Sure.
it's all like, I don't know. I feel like the magic being something that kind of expresses itself through physical reality in King is pretty consistent. It just feels very Dark Tower to me, where there's a lot of stuff in the Dark Tower, speaking very broadly, where it's like the logic of it is internally consistent, but also just very weird.
Yeah,
in a way where you're like, okay, sure. I mean, like I can, like, we're following the rules, and so that A leads to B leads to C, but like those linkages themselves are just not things that any other author would have thought of. So I don't know. A lot of this book feels very Dark Tower. Like the nature of the way, the shine, the touch is portrayed. I've avoided saying it multiple times because it would become repetitive, but it's like this really fits right in with the way things are portrayed in the Dark Tower.
Yeah, I mean, it makes total sense that he wrote this book. He wrote The Shining before he wrote most of the Dark Tower, and this book is a book that is written after he's finished the Dark Tower, and actually after he just wrote another entry. This is the book he was working on after he finished Wind Through the Keyhole. So yeah, I think this magic system, we'll call it, although I hate calling it that, aligns much more with the Dark Tower universe and the rules of that universe. I think you're right.
Yeah.
And it is silly, but to be clear, I don't hate this. I don't dislike it. It just it makes sense. It makes sense as this is another one of the cost of consuming souls, is that there is a piece of this boy's body that was not right, and by ingesting his life force, you have also ingested that piece of him.
Yeah.
So Grandpa Flick continues to cycle in and out, and Rose stays with him, risking infection. As she watches the oldest member of their community slowly heads towards death, they formulate a plan. They need to get Abra, and fast. Not only because they could use the steam, but they decide that since she probably has the MMR vaccine in her, that if one steam person gives them a virus, the other steam person would give them the immunities? Sure.
Maybe. Yeah. It's funny because I have like this hunch that actually says that maybe they're wrong. That maybe even if they were to get Abra, it wouldn't work. This is completely made up, and I'm sure we'll never find out whether I'm right or wrong. But like, it would be kind of, it feels desperate, I guess, is why I'm saying that. Like, it feels like a desperation move where Rose and the rest of the True Knot just can't accept the idea that like their time is winding down. The steam is becoming less plentiful. They're becoming more vulnerable to things that they used to not be vulnerable to. And their days are essentially numbered, and she's just in complete denial about this.
I think you're right. I mean, I think one important thing to note about this is that they've been existing for hundreds of years, and you would figure if every time you take steam from someone with some sort of illness or virus or disease, that would have been a problem for them throughout their history. And we're told specifically that this is a very new paradigm for them, that they are not used to getting rube illnesses, that they didn't even think about it. That I think it's the doctor who said he noticed some spots on Bradley that were measles, but he didn't even really think about it because we don't get their illnesses. It doesn't happen to us. So this is whether this is happening because of like the general shrinkage of magic in the world, or this is just the next phase in their evolution of whatever their magic thing is. We are seeing this change in them. And so, yeah, maybe it is a change that ultimately, even if they had a steamhead like Abra to keep them going, they're just reaching the end of their life, the end of their existence, the end of this idea of the True Knot, of these kind of steam vampires, is going away with the rest of the magic of the world.
Yep, I agree.
Yeah. So Dan wakes up to a chalkboard message from Abra saying that she hurt Rose the Hat and that she needs to meet up to chat. They do meet up the next day, and she fills him in on what they've learned. It strikes me, Matt, that the majority of what we see in this exposition, as well as in a lot of the next chapter exposition, when we're filling Dave Stone in on all the stuff, is all stuff we, the reader, already know already, right? We know a fair amount about the True Knot. We know that they're very old. We know that they're vampires. We know that they eat the shining and they call it steam. I don't hate this part. I don't hate the chapter. I don't hate this exposition, but it just got me thinking, is there a better way of doing this? Because like when I think about exposition like this, I think that the way exposition can work and be more interesting if we, the audience, are learning these things at the same time the characters are. Like you almost have to do this thing where you have to catch characters up on the story, but the story's been built in such a way that we cut to the True Knot so much that we, the audience, have learned so much about them ourselves already that almost all of this information is nothing new for us. And so I guess I'm just posing the question, like, is there a version of the story that doesn't cut to the True Knot as much, that keeps them kind of this amorphous mystery until our characters start learning more about them, that maybe slightly elevates this exposition? I don't know.
That's interesting. I didn't think about it in terms of like making the True Knot more mysterious. I was just thinking like this part of the story is still somewhat enjoyable, despite the fact that everything you said is true, that it is all information that we know. I mean, I don't want to be flippant and say like, oh yeah, this all should have been replaced with, Abra caught him up on what had transpired. And then, you just skip several pages because then you miss out on a lot of the fun character back and forth, which is building character and making us like these people more. You miss out on the subtle shadings that are added to Dan's interpretations and reactions to what he's hearing, like being really worried about how incautious Abra was. Like there's a similar line of thought that applies later with Abra's dad, where like, yeah, the information that they're conveying to Abra's dad is almost entirely redundant, but his reactions are highly dramatic. And it's a dramatic scene, and it would feel kind of cheap if we just skipped over it and we're like, it doesn't matter. It's not important to the plot, so it's unimportant. It's like that's just if kind of an anti-Stephen King sentiment. Like what's important is the characters' reactions to things.
I completely agree. And that's why I think this one does work, is that the thing that matters here is not the actual information that Abra is conveying to Dan, but the manner in which she's conveying the information, because we are setting the table for this idea that we kind of hit pretty hard at the very end of this week's reading, that like, should we be concerned about Abra?
Mhm.
And not for like that she's in harm's way, but just that she has this kind of violent tendency to her. She's an extremely powerful person that was incautious, yes, but also a part of her really enjoyed fucking this lady up and really wants to do it again. And like at the end of the chapter really wants them to get shot and die. And it's like, I mean, yeah, these people need to die. I'm not arguing that, oh no, we shouldn't kill the True Knot. That's not what I'm saying. It's just like, we're definitely setting up this thing of like, ooh. I mean, like the end of the chapter introduces the idea of, oh, she has a little bit of a temper, doesn't she? Which is a thing Dan Torrance knows about very, 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 very well, right? We're once again calling back to The Shining and the things that scare us about characters in relation to characters in The Shining. And so I think all that matters, and I like that King uses an exposition scene to delve into that. I think that's why his exposition scenes work. But yeah, there was a part of me that was just like, nothing new is learned here by the reader itself, and I wonder if is there a different version of this? Can you do that? Can you still make this a character scene and also hold back on some true not information in a way that we're also getting that at the same time? Maybe ultimately that wouldn't be any better. I don't know.
Right. I mean, I feel like it might have. Okay, I'll make one concrete suggestion for, like, I don't know. You could call it an improvement. Would be just like maybe Abra learns one thing that we don't know from being inside Rose's head, and that Dan doesn't know, and Abra hasn't told us yet. She learns one piece of additional information that's important, that she's able to say, and while I was rifling through those filing cabinets, I found blank. And then it would be like, oh, okay, that's something, because as it was, you're right. It's basically rehashing stuff that we already know from Rose's perspective. So
yeah, I mean, the one thing, we do get to see that she knows that they're in Sidewinder, but again, that's a little bit later. But again, that's news for Danny. We already know about all that.
Right.
So yeah, I mean, I want to be clear here that I'm not critiquing it. This is not one of the things I'm like, oh, this book's bad because it does this, this, and this. I just thought it was interesting. I mean, I agree. The meat of the scene is exactly what you talked about, that, oh, Abra's being very reckless. Abra is very powerful, and has never really faced a challenge to that power, and is maybe herself underestimating how terrible these people are. Like, she knows it, certainly. But she's still a child, and she's never had to come up against something like this.
Yeah.
And also we're worried about, the smiles that she gets on her face when thinking about these people being hurt. It's like, ooh.
Yeah. This tick that she has, this rubbing her mouth tick. Are we supposed to recognize that? Like, is that a Jack Torrance thing or something?
I don't know.
I know Bob Hoskins rubs his mouth when he wants a drink in Who Framed Roger Rabbit. Do you think she got it from
I think she is like really into Who Framed Roger Rabbit, and she just kind of subtly just grabbed that,
picked that up from Detective Eddie Valiant.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, I'm glad we figured that out.
No, but I mean, I think it's fair to say, like, we have multiple times throughout the course of this novel drawn comparisons between characters, right?
Mm-hmm.
Like this is a book that exists in the shadow of The Shining in every possible way. And King has again and again and again called attention to moments, things, characters, line of thinking, all these things that mirror or reflect or are specifically opposed to things that happen in The Shining, to mine that for like emotional significance. Like this is the thing that we're like, I said at the very beginning of this thing that if you didn't read The Shining before reading this book, I don't think you would lose anything. I am kind of now reversing that idea, where like I think you would be able to follow the plot, sure. I think you would be able to understand the character, sure, but there's this other level with which the book is operating, which is like, I know you have read The Shining, and I am going to use your emotional understanding of The Shining in every possible way I can. By the way, jumping forward a few weeks, I think Mike Flanagan does this exact same thing with both this book and the movie The Shining, in a way that I think is still kind of incredible, and we'll get into that in a few weeks' time. But I think he is operating on a very similar level with the way he is calling back to that film and referencing that film.
I just realized that Dr. Sleep is aliens to The Shining's Alien, because like the first book is like they're bottled up in a single confined setting. There's fewer characters. It's in some ways more more sort of a clean and simple story. And the horror tone is kind of different. In this one, we have a looser setting. We have lots of bad guys. It's kind of, there's more tactical, tactical realism to all this, where we're, like you said, we're concerned about the logistics of the RVs and the details of the magic powers in a way that feels very like Queen Alien.
Mm-hmm.
I'm gonna keep harping on this. Don't worry. Now that
Okay.
I've uncovered this connection.
So if the ghost in room 217 in The Shining is Ash, who in Doctor Sleep is Bishop?
Probably John.
Okay.
Dr. John.
So he's like,
he's going to say,
robot?
Believe me, I prefer not to. I'm synthetic, not stupid.
Is he going to get cut in half?
He's going to get cut in half.
It's really sad.
Yeah, it is.
So I love the way this chapter ends, by the way. Or this part of the chapter, at least. They finish their conversation, and the last thing Dan says to her is, "Did you really get an A on your bio report?" Which is what she said to him to start to kick the conversation off. Part of like the cover of Uncle and niece meeting. But like I maybe I'm just reading this wrong, but I got like genuine affection out of that question. Like we covered the things we're worried about, and this is just like him genuinely asking because he genuinely cares about her as a person. And this is not just a relationship of convenience or a relationship of I owe this girl something. I owe a debt and I'm paying it here. He really actually wants to know about her bio report. And I think that's pretty great.
Yeah, he's a good uncle.
No. So we're back with the True Knot as Grandpa Flick finally goes. He cries out to Rose to make it stop, just like Conchetta did with her granddaughter. We talked about that already. But of course they can't do anything, and they just all watch as Flick cycles out, but not back in. He's gone. So we talked about this already, but the True are monsters, but they're all kind of sad here.
Yeah.
Right? They mourn.
They do. They legitimately mourn. We're inside Rose's head. We see that she is, in fact, actually sad, not pretending.
Yeah.
It's so interesting to do it this way, right?
Yeah, it definitely is. Rose orders Crow to go get Abra after their 2-day mourning period. They won't be able to do the usual 7 because they're in a rush, but they're going to take 2 days and then they're going to go. She won't be going herself. She says she's going to stay back here. And then she asks him to go to a sex toy store in Sidewinder to get something? Huh?
I don't have a lot of ideas here.
The book doesn't say what this is.
I have really, I mean, there's like not that many things it could be, right? But I don't know. I can't, get a blow up doll and use it as a decoy. I don't know. I'm reaching.
I mean, we do specifically know that the store has a blow up doll, right? That is one thing we've been told, that the store has a blow up doll. No, it's just probably like a bunch of dildos for, the huge.
Yeah, just for personal use. She's just out.
Yeah,
that makes sense.
Please, I know we're in mourning, but please run to the store and give me just a vast collection of dildos, please. It's
that would be very that would be out of left field, but I feel like we could find something to say about it,
Yeah.
Just
do you want to try
to say something about what would happen if Crow comes back with just a suitcase full of dildos?
What if chapter 13 is the dildos and we just spend 20 pages really diving deep into those? How would you an analysis book analysis podcast host deal with that eventuality?
Well, I mean, ultimately it's about the fact that Rose has extended her life artificially, and what is she doing with it? Well, she's using it to just find pleasure in sort of the most meaningless, literally masturbatory fashion, where there's no actual human connection involved. And I can go on like this if you need me to, Scott, but I think I've made my point. Thank you.
Well done.
Thank you.
Well done. I would expect nothing less from you. You just nailed it.
Thank you.
All right, we are back with Dan and John as they hop on a plane and fly to Des Moines, Iowa. This excursion allows them to talk for a little bit, which allows King to once again talk about Dan's family. This leads to him basically just reading a copy of The Shining to John over the course of their trip. Matt, I love this line here. We just had to say it. If you think The Shining begins and ends with paltry shit like telepathy, you're way short, he said. There are other worlds than these. He said the thing.
He said the thing.
He said the thing.
I love when he says the thing.
Mm-hmm. And then he talks about his dad a little bit. I love this as well. My father tried, he said. That's the best I can say for him. The most malevolent spirits in his life came in bottles. If he tried AA, things might have been a lot different. But he didn't. I don't think my mother even knew there was such a thing, or she would have suggested he give it a shot. By the time he went up to the Overlook Hotel, where a friend of his got him a job as the winter caretaker, his picture could have been next to dry drunk in the dictionary.
Good stuff.
Yeah, so we kind of talked about this a little bit, Dan's complicated relationship with his father and how he feels about his father, right?
Yeah. Yeah. It's evolving. I mean, he's talking more about it, certainly. I don't know that I don't feel like this is a big crux for his character. Like, I think my interpretation of Dan is that he has long ago come to peace with the idea of the complexity of who his father was and what happened to him. He doesn't see his father as purely a saint who was put upon by the hotel, nor does he see him as a monster. I think he has a fairly accurate view of who his father was, but I think maybe he's just being a little bit more philosophical about things in this moment.
Yeah. And I love this idea that, AA certainly did exist in the 70s, but it was less well known. Like, I think one thing that is absolutely true is the biggest irony of Alcoholics Anonymous is, like, everybody knows that it exists. Like, it has become so known in our culture, and that, like, I think I credit that to, like, people talking about it and people talking about their addiction and that becoming something that people are much more willing to share and talk about, that we know that there are resources out there for people. That, like, the idea that Wendy just didn't know Alcoholics Anonymous was a thing would be insane to us in 2025, right?
Mm-hmm.
Like, everyone knows that that's a thing. Like, but it shows how the world has changed a little bit, and also how Dan can get the support he needs. I do wonder, and not to be too tough on old Jack, I do wonder if he would have succeeded in an Alcoholics Anonymous program based on what we knew about him. I think Jack would struggle with that in a way that Dan, not to minimize Dan, like, I'm not saying Dan has not struggled with his sobriety. Certainly he has, but I just feel like he, as a person, is much more open to the methods of it than I think I hypothesized Jack would have been. I don't know. Maybe I'm completely wrong. I mean, there's no way to possibly ever know. But
Jack has a huge ego.
Yeah.
Dan doesn't so much have a huge ego. He was humbled very early in life.
Yeah.
There's one thing I'll say about the way Stephen King does things sometimes. I don't know if I can actually find a convenient example to make this point, but I feel like we're setting something up where, early in the story, you set up two things, one prominent, one subtle. The prominent one is Dan is clearly an alcoholic. The subtle one is Dan clearly has anger control issues for reasons.
Mm-hmm.
And then you say, okay, early part of the story, and Dan gets a handle on the alcoholism. He grows as a character. He has a moment of catharsis and change, and then he moves on into the story. And part of you, as the reader, it's an interesting little jujitsu move that King does here, because part of you is like, oh, okay, so we've resolved Dan's thing. We've resolved Dan's plotline. And what you forget is there were two things. There was the anger thing also. And that is a thing that we see it, we've seen it beated. We've seen it reemphasized that, he still has this anger issue. Even if he's not drinking, he still borderline kicks a man's ass for being overly physical with the dying man.
Mm-hmm.
And and then that the anger is repeatedly connected to what Abra is experiencing. So the idea of anger and Dan's anger, I think, is the story element that again connects to Jack, by the way. So the reason I
Yes.
bring this up, that like the inciting thing that made me think about this was you brought up that Jack might not do well in AA, and I'm like, yeah, regardless of whether Jack is drinking, he still has this anger issue, and I think those things are to some degree tied. The anger can lead to the drinking, and the drinking can amplify the anger. But
Mm-hmm.
Dan has not dealt with the anger. He's not even necessarily realized that he should, I guess.
Yeah.
I do wonder what we're going to do with that element of the story.
Yeah. I like that a whole lot. And I just agree that this idea that certainly he's able to put a lid on the anger in a more controlled fashion when he's sober, but he also really hasn't been pushed very hard yet. Like you can imagine a situation in which like these despicable people, the True Knot, how hard does Dan have to be pushed to fall back on that well of anger inside of him? Yeah. So Matt, before we go on, I do want to talk to you about something here, and this isn't in the script, but I just want to talk about this because this part of the book is a thing that I think works, but is very clunky to me from just like a plot perspective.
Mm-hmm.
So here's what's happening here. Our two characters are hopping on a plane and flying to Iowa to go dig up a corpse to pick up a baseball glove so they can immediately turn around and fly back to New Hampshire to deliver the glove so Abra can touch the glove and then find out where the True Knot is and in how imminent danger they are. Doesn't that seem like it's just a little much? Like it seems like King is solving a problem that he created of like I was like, well, we got to get the glove. How are we going to get the glove? Oh, just send some characters to just run over there and get it. And we'll just do this quick thing where they just fly halfway across the country and then they're back. And don't worry about it. It was a quick thing, a quick trip. They just did it and they came back. Well, you didn't have to make it so she had to touch the glove to be able to find out where the chunk is, right? Like that was a decision of your own. I don't even hate this. It just feels a little clunky to me in just like in a way that reminds me a little bit of the ways in which Insomnia felt a little clunky plot wise to me, where we just like build things and steps and hoops to go through that I'm just like, why are we doing this? This feels like too much. It feels like we're doing too many things.
Yeah.
Where we're gonna just do this cross country jaunt just real quick. It's not like a big part of the book. It's just we're gonna run over here real quick. We're gonna do it, and then we're gonna leave. Done. I don't know. Do you agree with me at all on this, or am I on my own on this island?
No. I get it. I think it's like it's the kind of thing where I think the book is like working really well and keeping you engaged and feeling propulsive and all of the other things, then maybe you wouldn't notice that it kind of is dragging. But it's like, no, it kind of does feel like it's dragging. I mean, we said it in a nice way, but this is basically like the talking chapters, and it's kind of a lot of talking for a lot of chapters. We haven't even gotten to all of the talking. There's a whole nother talking chapter that we're about to get to. And that can feel, I like the word clunky because it's just like, surely there was a different, smoother, more efficient way to do this that accomplished all the same goals. Like the most generous thing I can say about like the motivation for doing it this way is like, we want to give time for Dan and the doctor to have these heart-to-heart conversations, and in order for them to have the time to do this, we need some kind of pattern interrupt in the story that forces them to go off together and do something. And I guess I'm just like, okay, but this conversation took 5 minutes. They could have had this conversation driving to where Abra is, right? So I don't even buy the excuse that I just made. So
I mean, like again, it's like you can kind of see the mind of the storyteller like coming across these problems, because like we wanted the True Knot to kill this kid way far away from where Abra is, because we wanted to establish that she had the ability to be there, and that is part of her power, right?
Mhm.
That is a glimpse for the True Knot of the strength of her power, is that she's able to astral project across a great distance to be there in the moment when they kill this kid. And that's like, okay, so I can't make the murder happen like just down the road, so they just have to drive to go bury the body. I can't do that. It has to be across the country. So I've got to get them to hop on a plane and get across the country. And then like I just want to be like, stop, 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 stop. No, you don't. Why do we have to make the glove a thing, right? Like
Mhm.
this is made up bullshit shining power shit. Like we don't have to make it so you have to touch the baseball glove. Um, and like I guess if I squint at it, it's like one of the things they wanted to do is make the death of this boy real to our characters, that
Mhm.
like Abra has to actually touch the thing and feel the death. And but like I don't know, you could argue that she was already there, she witnessed it happen and was there. Like this is it's a type of thing where honestly like I assumed was not in Flanagan's movie. I had just forgotten because it felt so clunky to me that he would just look at that and go, no, we don't need that. But it is still in the movie. Spoilers
Mhm.
for the movie. And again, like this is in my mind a very mild complaint, but it is just something I was definitely thinking about when I was looking at all this. Like we're like
Yeah.
going all the way across the country and like doing all
Yeah.
this stuff, and it's not like there's a difference between like cross country travel, and there's moments where cross country travel like matters and is important and is like a part, like the stand, right? Traveling across the country in the stand is like a huge part of the book. It is a traveling book for the first half. But this is just like, I would fly there, we have a conversation, we can dig up body, fly back, boom, done, next. In a way that's just like maybe just cut the airplane
Yeah.
part out of it. I don't
I
know.
I mean, I think to me, ultimately, the worst part is that it's slowing down a part of the story that's already kind of slow and dominated by these conversations.
Yeah.
If it weren't, if both of those things weren't true, then I don't even think we'd be complaining. And I think honestly, the scene of them finding and digging up the glove is great. It's a great scene.
Yeah. I
Um,
agree. I
it's
agree.
even possible that the reason why King went with it is he just saw the scene of them finding the glove and digging up the glove, and the horror and poignancy of that being really compelling to him, and so he just had to write it. But like you said, it's where it falls relative to all these other slow scenes that really kind of just makes you roll your eyes a little bit.
Yeah, yeah, I agree with that. I do like the scene. Let's just go ahead and get into it now. They go to the hardware store, pick up some shovels, and then head back to the factory at nighttime. Dan calls out to Abra, waking her up, and she kind of astral projects into him, which, interestingly enough, has a physical reaction in him. Right? You
Mm,
know, you talked about mind melding. Abra can see better in the dark than Dan can. So when Abra projects into Dan, he can see better in the dark. He
mhm,
is in some ways seeing through her eyes. And by the way, I do think this is one of the reasons why we did this scene and had this like again, we're demonstrating Abra's power and also setting up things that she can do.
mhm,
Um, and clarifying how this thing works, that they are kind of one in a very specific kind of way that could ultimately pay off in the end. uh, that's one thing we're doing here.
mhm.
um,
Sure, makes sense.
but she can also sense exactly where Bradley is buried, and I think one interesting note here that Danny's sense of smell is shined
Yeah,
slightly.
shine
Is that
smell.
because of her?
I think
um,
so. Because it seems like his ability to smell the body goes from 0 to 100, like, the moment he is possessed by her or,
yeah, yeah.
melded with her.
Hmm. Yeah. So they slowly dig up the body and find the baseball glove. This is, of course, horrible, right? And King's writing here understands that. I love this section. The air escaped Dan's lungs in a shocked whoosh, and the breath he inhaled to replace it was rich with rot. He lunged out of the grave to his right, managed to vomit on the dirt they'd taken out of the hole instead of on the wasted remains of Bradley Trevor, whose only crime had been to be born with something a tribe of monsters wanted, and had stolen from him on the very wind of his dying shrieks. So yeah, I mean, you could, Matt, make the argument that this is not just about making it real for Abra, but this is making it real for Dan. That him having to go down there, him having to dig up the body, him having to pick the glove up, and find this dead kid um, is important to him being committed and taking it serious. My my contradiction to that would be like Dan's already in.
Yeah.
Um,
Well,
but it makes
he-
it more personal. It makes it
it
more emotional.
it makes it more personal. And the thing that jumped out to me was like when he sees like that this kid had a favorite baseball player, that causes him to have this inner reaction of just like rage, of just like, I don't
Yeah,
remember
yeah,
exactly what he thinks, but he's like, I'm gonna fucking kill these guys or something like that. And it's, again, it's that anger, it's that Torrance anger raising its head, which in this context we kind of like to see because we want to see him kill these guys, but it's definitely not. He was thinking more about protecting Abra. Now he's thinking more about vengeance and wiping these guys out.
yeah, yeah. And again, this is like part of the reason for the scene, right? Is to do this. And I like this scene and I think it works. I think the problem I have with this whole excursion is the way we get there, not necessarily what happens while we're there.
Mm-hmm.
Because I do like this. I do like the fact that he sees the um Jim Tomei
Mm-hmm.
name, and it all becomes personal. And the killing of a kid, of course, is directly related to Dan's experience, that he's dealt with things that wanted his shine.
Yeah.
And so that makes it very personal for him. Yeah.
Yep.
So as they head back into town, both John and Dan decide that it's time to bring Abra's parents into the thing. Abra is listening and disagrees strongly, but they have to do it, and they kind of all collectively decide that this is where we're going next.
Yeah, I love all this. I mean, this is that subtle, important character stuff that makes King's characters live and breathe. The idea that she has this huge negative reaction to the idea that they're going to tell her parents. I loved
Yeah.
it.
Yeah. We briefly see the True Knot take off on the way east. So we say bury the word. Just gonna call him Barry the Chunk, which is what she says his name is. She's wrong. Just
Uh-huh.
gonna call him that.
Yeah.
Crow Daddy, Jimmy Numbers, Walnut. Oh, and Snakebite Andy. Remember her, Matt? Remember her?
Uh-huh.
This
I
is one of
do.
those things that like I just think was so off-putting to me the first time I read it, that like our second chapter of the novel is the origin story for Snakebite Andy. We are now 350 pages into the book. What has Snakebite Andy done in this book so far? Essentially nothing.
Yeah.
And again, like on reflection, in retrospect, that scene was more about setting up Rose the Hat than it was setting up Andy. But I think on your first read, you don't necessarily get there, and it
Mhm.
just there's like I'm again, not a critique, but it's just like I just think it's so funny how a non-entity Andy is, and the vast majority of this book, after being like the second introduced character in the novel.
Yeah. She's like one of the cab drivers from some of his other books, except she sticks around.
Yeah, yeah. But then we're with David Stone as he chats with his wife about the grandmother's upcoming move, and the sheer number of stuff that has in her house. And now she's already starting to think about what's going to happen once her grandmother dies, and the work they're going to have to do to clean, and deal with all the stuff that she has. And again, like I want to hit the speed again. Like we were hard on Dave last week, but I really do love this side of him comforting his wife, supporting her in this difficult time. Like he's not distracted by his book on this phone call, right? The book is barely mentioned this week at all, right? I don't think we get a mention of the book at all
Yeah.
in
I
this
don't think
week's
so.
reading. So Jack Torrance, he definitely ain't, is what I'll say.
Yeah, it's kind of been an interesting journey with him. I'm not sure where we're heading with him actually, because at
Yeah.
first I thought it was sort of a parallel to Jack and the idea that, Dan got some shine from Jack and he also got some bad habits from Jack. And maybe that's the same thing that's happening here, but he seems like a much better guy than Jack, or at least, I don't know. We'll see. I think I'm just going to like reserve judgment until we see kind of where things go.
Yeah, and ultimately, it's very possible that what we could have done is taken a little nugget of just for fun echoing and picked at it too much, like that we weren't supposed to pick at this much. And the book is kind of slowly revealing that to us now. I don't know.
Sure.
We'll see.
Maybe. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. So all seems pretty good with old Dave Stone, and then Abra comes to him with something she needs to tell him. And this is the end of this chapter, and we see here, once I understood how much it worried you guys, how much it scared you, I hid it, but I can't hide it anymore. Dan says I have to tell. So the rest of this chapter basically circles, and next week, the next chapter as well, circles around David Stone like losing his fucking mind. But like, let's just say here, for the record, I find it very hard to blame him. Like, just put yourself. You have an almost 13-year-old daughter, right?
Mm-hmm.
Or actually 13-year-old daughter. Like, what would you do if she walked up to you tomorrow and said, I have to tell you something, Daddy. My 43-year-old best friend that I've been talking to for years told me I have to talk to you about this, Dad.
Uh-huh.
You'd probably like freak the fuck out a little bit.
Yeah, for sure. No, I think my overall reaction to the David Stone stuff is like all of his reactions here are totally understandable, and I think actually somewhat played for comic relief, because it's not like he shoots Dan, right? He's just having a reasonable but like sort of played up reaction, and his like bewilderment and being constantly out of his depth as these people are trying to explain all this wild supernatural shit to him is amusing to us. Obviously there's a tension to this. There's a ticking clock. The stakes are high and everything. But like, I think the way this is being played, it actually alleviates some of that tension and makes it a little more fun. Maybe. I don't know if you felt the same way about this character.
No, I think you're right. I think it is absolutely played comedically, and I think that is intentional. I think one thing that I never doubted in these chapters is that like they were going to win Dave over and proceed with their plan. Like, this was not a book that it was that Dave was going to be like, no, I refuse, get out of my house, and then Dan and Billy and John have to like figure out how to navigate this thing without Abra's parents on board. Like, it just seemed like that would be an excursion in the plot that we're going to go to. And I think part of that feeling comes from the fact that this is played a little bit for laughs, because it is absurd. It is ridiculous. He is overwhelmed and freaking out. And so like, you just kind of always feel like, okay, like this is going to end with him going, all right, fine. Fine. What do we got to do?
Yeah. And we're in the know, right? We're watching him being like, come on, man, catch up, right? So it kind of has to be a little funny at his expense.
Mm-hmm. All right, chapter 12, they call it Steam. The chapter opens with John and Dan back in New England. They're heading right to the Stones' house, where Abra and her very confused and angry father are waiting for them. Abra sprints up to Dan and gives him a big hug, which surely just makes David Stone like super happy. Like, super happy.
It's her best friend. Yeah.
I love that he says we need to thrash this out with your dad first before dealing with the baseball glove. Like, what a word to use, like thrash it out.
Right. I mean, it's almost like a typo. It's like it should be hash it out, but no, that's great.
Dan attempts to explain that he met Abra when she was just a baby, when she reached out telepathically, and oh god, this is gonna go so poorly. Like, it is one of those things that, you know, sometimes with Stephen King plots in general, like when you just say them out loud, it just sounds absurd. And I think that's true both within and without the world of the story. And like the idea of like, yeah, well, see, no, what happened was I was at an AA meeting. See, oh yeah, by the way, I'm an alcoholic. I'm a 40-something-year-old alcoholic that's been hanging out with your preteen daughter. See, what happened was I was at an AA meeting, and I was just jotting in my book, and then I just wrote the name Abra. And then when she was like 3, she said hi to me on my blackboard in my hospice. Yeah, I hang out with old and dying people. That's my job. So yeah, then we became friends, and we kind of talked on and off. And then her and I met privately a couple weeks back. Yeah, she didn't tell you. We lied and said I was her uncle, you know, so people wouldn't judge it. It's just like, it's absurd. It's absolutely absurd.
Right. I think some of the ways that Dan is explaining this is adding to the comic relief. Where it's like, God, no, don't say it that way, man. Come on.
Yeah, yeah,
Uh,
yeah. So meanwhile, though, the True continue to head east. They're in Toledo now. Jimmy Numbers comes to Crow with some yearbook photos. We have three people here that he has photos of: Julianne Cross, Emma Dean, and Abra Stone. All three live on the street where the earthquake happened, or right next to it. And then Crow says, "If I had to pick." And he taps on Abra's picture. She's got a certain look in her eyes, a steamy look. And all I have to say is the fucking internet is the word. Why do we have children's yearbook photos on the internet? Why are we doing? God damn it!
I'm pretty sure my kids' yearbook photos are not on the internet, so that's nice. But
Nice,
I also feel like there are other ways they could find those photos, so it's not that much of a relief. Yeah.
Yeah. But so they basically know it's Abra now. Hooray!
Great.
But Matt, as we leave them, we see that Barry the Chunk. We're just gonna call him the Chunk. We're gonna call him the Chunk. He has the measles. He's got the measles.
So there's a ticking clock for all of our True Not characters. It's not just
they're
all...
back with the Stones, and the conversation is going. It's going.
Yep.
I really did like this part, though. We thought all that was over. Dave shot Abra an accusing look. Except for a few little premonitions, we thought she outgrew it. I'm sorry, Daddy. Her voice was a little more than a whisper. Maybe she shouldn't have to be sorry, Dan said, hoping he didn't sound as angry as he felt. She hid her ability because she knew you and your wife wanted it gone. She hid it because she loves you and wanted to be a good daughter. She told you that, I suppose? We never even discussed it, Dan said, but I had a mother I loved dearly, and because I did the same thing. Abra shot him a look of naked gratitude. So there's so much to talk about here. Like, first of all, I love this. I love Dan's and Abra's, like, we talked about this when they first met, but this idea that, like, nobody understands what it's like to be this except for them.
Mm-hmm.
And we haven't talked about, like, I don't even know if this is intentional what King is doing here, but there is I think some bit of, like, queer metaphor here, right? This idea that, like, she had this thing that was part of her, her parents didn't like it, wanted her to outgrow it, and she just hid it from them. And she hid it from them, and now here's a person coming along saying, I am the same way, I did the same thing, and I'm telling you she can't do that anymore. She has to be herself. She has to be true to who she is and what she is. So I don't know if King was even thinking about that when he wrote it. Maybe he was, but I think it's there.
Yeah, sure. I now that you point that out, I mean, I think so. I guess I always just saw it as a general thing where I think we all kind of have our things that we are secretive about or ashamed about, even if it makes no sense. And so it's very, I guess my point is, it's very easy to empathize and relate to this, even if you don't have the shine.
Yeah.
And
sure.
I think that would be one of the major ways. And yeah, it fits really nicely. So
yeah,
sure.
Yeah. It occurred to me for the first time when we had the, like, we thought she outgrew it, and the accusing look that Dave shoots to Abra. The one moment that I think he doesn't look great in this thing is having an accusing look of, like, you lied to me about this. And it's like she had this immense pressure she felt coming from you guys to hide this. That you kind of be like, hey man, back off. And to your point, we see Dan's anger here right above the surface. I just want to say, we never get to see if Dan sounded as angry as he felt, but I'm gonna say he did. I'm gonna say he did not do a good job of hiding his anger in his voice there. Yeah,
that was my suspicion as well.
Yeah. Dave wants to go to the police, but they all think that would be a very bad idea. They convince him to let Abra touch the baseball glove first to see what she can learn about the True, and then go from there. Abra does that, feels Barry the Chunk. Again, just going to call him that now. That's Abra's incorrect word for him, and that's a lot better than the other word. She knows that there's a group of them coming, and Barry is part of it, that they'll be here tomorrow. And she also knows that Barry is sick with the measles.
Yep. I wonder if the editor, I wonder if the first draft did not say Barry the Chunk. It said the other word. And the editor was like, Steve, you can't have that word in this book 400 times for no reason.
Yeah.
Please call him something else. And then Steve was like, no. And then they compromised at, okay, we'll call him that like 40 times. And then the rest of the times we'll call him the chunk.
Yeah, I mean, maybe. I think King has never kind of held back. Like, he's used the N-word many, 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 many times over the course of his career. I think it's really interesting here that they call him that because he's got small eyes, right? Like, his eyes kind of slant a little bit, and so he's not Asian at all, but his eyes are a little slanty. So the True Knot, the beacon of equality and progressiveness, labeled him horribly.
Yeah, I mean, I we never really said it out loud here, but it's like, yeah, it's literally just showing them to be sort of casual racists in a way that's so baked into their DNA that they just are like, you will be Bob the Slur, and there's no problem with that.
I mean, in a world where you don't even see these people as people, like what is being racist? Like, that's silly. That's like it's like saying that I'm racist against a certain kind of cow.
Longhorns, man. Oh, I just realized we are racist against a certain kind of cow.
Oh, is that because where we went to school? Yeah,
no, yeah, it is.
Yeah, fucking Longhorns.
Oh my god.
Wow, this is eye-opening. I don't know how to. I need to process this live on the podcast right now.
Yeah, me too. Yeah, or maybe later.
All right, so I do love this. Abby, Dave asked, Abadu, are you all right? Yes, but don't call me that. I just love this moment of like Abra kind of starting to assert herself and be like, no, I do not want your childish pet name for me now. I am coming into my own. I am understanding my power and who I am, and you don't get to call me that anymore.
It's always been mildly distracting to me because our family's dog has the nickname of Abadu. So,
anyway. Well, there you go. Not a problem anymore because not allowed to call her that anymore.
Yep.
So Abra describes the thoughts of the True Knot as lizardy. She says they look like people and they act like people, but they are not human. She also learns that they're rich and have good enough stories that calling the police wouldn't do anything. Again, this is stuff we all technically already know. I do love this when she says you can't call the police, and she says it. You can't. Abra spoke in the dull voice of a depressed 50-year-old woman. Do what you want, that voice said. I'm only telling you. That man, that makes you a little sad, I think.
Yeah, once again, we see how world weary this power has made all these characters that have it.
Yeah,
I think even this is kind of retrospectively helping us understand, why Dan would be willing to drink starting from a young age to get rid of this, because you can easily imagine like a 13-year-old Dan Torrance just as worn down as Abra already is at this point.
Totally. Yeah, completely agree. All right. Abra also tells Dan that the rest of the True Knot are currently at a campsite in a town called Sidewinder, and Dan has a panic attack a little bit. He realizes that one of the things that Dick Halloran told him when he was speaking through the voice of a dead woman was where they come from is his childhood, where all the evil things come from. And we didn't realize that Dan met he met that literally. Dick did. That they come from the place of his childhood. And I think he says sooner or later I'll have to go back there. You, of course, have future knowledge of the movie, and so you know where this story goes. Obviously, the book cannot go to the exact same place because the Overlook Hotel is not standing as it is in the film version. But I feel like, and tell me if you're wrong, the second we introduced Sidewinder and the Overlook campsite and this place as a setting that our antagonists were at, it did just kind of feel inevitable that we were going to be there at some point. And I think the text just is making that clear right now.
You got to return to LV426.
God damn it. As Dan outlines his plan for how to deal with the oncoming raiding party, we cut back to that party. Barry is getting worse, but he says he can still locate Abra. They says they're not going to turn around; they're going to keep going. And Rose tells them all to push on because they need Abra. They need her now. She's going to be the solution to all their problems. And then the conversation ends like this, Matt. Is everything okay on your end? Sure, Rose said, and hung up before he could ask her anything else. That was okay. Sometimes you didn't need telepathy to tell when someone was lying. Even the rubes know that. Oh, shit.
Yeah.
What's going on back home in the True Knot camp?
Yeah.
How many people got the measles?
I'm going to guess a lot of them, possibly all of them. I don't know. Yeah.
So we're back with Dan after he just finishes outlining his plan. I I love this moment. Like, speaking of like almost played for comedy moments, the moment that Dave is like, "Oh, I need a drink. Anyone else want one?" And like the two alcoholics like look at each other and laugh. But then we get this moment where Abra asks if she can pour the drink, which she does so expertly. And they're like watching in like as she's like expertly pouring this drink. They're like watching very intently. And then he takes a sip and goes, "Ah, that's good. I bet it is," Dan thought, and saw Abra watching him. Her face, usually so open, was inscrutable, and for the moment he could not read the thoughts behind it. So what are we supposed to make of this reaction here, Matt? This is kind of like almost a funny haha scene of like Dave doesn't realize that he's talking to two alcoholics that are currently sober. And we're
I think I had kind of an immediate assumption that like the idea is that maybe Abra is seeing in her dad some of these alcoholic tendencies that Dan has conquered in himself, and maybe now only making that connection and realizing like, hey, maybe this is not normal. I don't know, that maybe that was kind of a jump to conclusions, but I'm not sure.
Yeah, interesting. I'm try to find a way to say this without any kind of spooky future sight, but like I the question I have is like, so Abra probably like knows that Dan is a recovering alcoholic, but maybe at 13 years old she doesn't know what that means, really. And maybe as she watches this man intently stare at her father holding up a drink and drink it, she feels for the first time the power of that urge he has within him. How strong it is, how present it is, even here 13 years later, when he hasn't had a drink since, and is maybe like seeing that for the first time in him. I don't know.
Yeah, kind of recognizing, or maybe even like thinking like, oh, if it's that good, maybe I want to try it. You know.
Yeah,
that's really interesting. Yeah,
I don't know.
We'll see.
So we don't learn the full scope of what Dan's plan is going to be here, but we learn that it involves using Abra as bait, sort of. The idea here is that their betting is that Abra can possess someone. Abra can astrally throw her body, and they're guessing that the people who have the ability to like locate you would locate where she's astrally projecting to, and not where she actually is. So meanwhile, she's actually going to be safe and sound in the house of her friend, Emma Dean, one of the 3 girls on their list. Fuck.
Yeah. I think we're just setting up the avalanche or whatever you call it, where everything comes together and everything goes wrong, right? You know.
Yeah, we almost have to expect things are going to go wrong in some way, right? Because the situation we have set up here is basically that each side thinks they're holding all the cards, right? Abra knows they're coming, knows when they're coming, has the ability to sense them, and they have a plan. They don't know that Abra can astrally locate like this, but on the flip side of this, Abra and company don't know. They know her name. They know what street she lives on. They don't know She has the name of all the other people that it could be, including one of her close friends.
Mhm.
So this is like it's just this really great construction of oncoming conflict and tension, in that this has to break wrong in some way. Like it's not just going to be that, oh, and the good guys defeated the bad guys and prevented them from getting Abra. The end. Um, then I guess we're gonna have to go fight Rose. Like it's gonna be more complex than that because it's a story. There's conflict, things have to go wrong, and so we'll just have to see how that happens.
Yep.
But
I
we're
love
setting
it.
the stage for it.
I
Yep.
agree. It's well, for all the complaining we did about this being slow, I think that the story is taking its time to set things up, and we're going to be really satisfied by all the fallout of this.
Yep. And then we end the chapter on Abra, once again tapping into some of her anger. Abra smiled. It was one Dan had seen before. It was her angry smile. He wondered if the true knot might have had second thoughts if they knew their target had a smile like that in their repertoire. Good, she said. Good. Abra? Dave looked bewildered and a little frightened. What? Abra ignored him for a moment. It was Dan she spoke to. They deserved it for what they did to the baseball boy. She wiped at her mouth with her cupped hand as if to erase that smile, but when she pulled the hand away, the smile was still there, her thinned lips showing the tips of her teeth. She clenched the hand into a fist. They deserved it. Nope, nothing to worry about
Yep.
there at all. We're all good.
Yep. I'm so glad everyone's happy now. No, it's great. I'm very excited to see what happens.
Yeah, it's going to be fun. But that will be the end of chapter 12 and the end of our reading for the week. Next week, we're going to do another little bit of a long one. We're going to cover all of part 3 of the book in one go. It'll be 111 pages, so a little bit longer than we normally do, but it is also going to be our penultimate episode, Matt. We got next week's reading and then the week after that, and then we're done with the book. So
Cool.
yeah, it's coming fast. It's coming fast.
All right.
All right, before we go, let's do some discussion questions. So this was our question from 2 weeks ago, episode 2 of Dr. Sleep. And what did we ask, Matt?
We asked, what's your favorite depiction of the struggle with sobriety? It's a lot of really good answers. This week, all 84001 says, my favorite depiction of the struggle for sobriety has 3 names: Edward, Cantor, motherfucking can't lean forward when he's sitting on an airplane toilet, Dean. His poison of choice isn't served in a bottle, but Eddie's ordeal kicking heroin during drawing of the 3 is inarguably one of the key plots in the early Dark Tower series that really hooks readers in. Without Eddie's battle with addiction and his humor and humanity throughout, the story likely never digs its claws into your back like the proverbial monkey. Ironically, he's probably the reason many of us become tower junkies ourselves. It's great. Because Eddie's a character you can't help but love, he's more than just the comic relief to the gruff Roland. He's also braver. He's also brave, tender, and compassionate. At times self-deprecating and insecure, but also silly enough to kill a sentient train with jokes even Dandolo wouldn't touch. Hell, I'd argue he's ultimately the true heart of the story, a gunslinger who actually found his redemption and broke his cycle. And for that, we say thank you, Eddie Dean.
Great. Great answer. Man, Eddie Dean is like one of my favorite characters of all time. I love him so much. I feel bad for the people that tried out the Dark Tower and dropped off after the first book because they never got to meet this guy, and he is the heart and soul of the Dark Tower series. Love him.
He's probably the most fun single Stephen King character.
I agree. Yep. All right, Pear Jane says, I really, really want to say The Shining, but I'm going with my other favorite sober journey, and that is the excellent Sherlock Holmes series, Elementary. We meet Sherlock just as we get a deep, intimate portrayal. We meet Sherlock just as he's come out of rehab. Watson is his sober companion hired to help him transition into daily life. We get a deep, intimate portrayal of life in AA, and Sherlock's reluctance and eventual commitment to the program. Eventually, Sherlock grows bored with the meetings and he decides to stop going as a challenge to himself. Watson confronts him, and he attributes his choice to his stunning intellect and low threshold for boredom. Watson essentially tells him to fuck off with that. Sobriety's a slog, and it's boring for everyone, and it's a choice you have to make every single day. In other words, the brilliant Sherlock is not special. The other aspect I love is his relationship with his sponsor, which is 100% reflected in Dr. Sleep, by the way. After a year of successful sobriety, his sponsor suggests he look for someone to sponsor himself. Sherlock declines, saying he would be a poor sponsor and he doesn't want to do it. Like Watson, Alfonso tells him it's not about him, it's about giving back to the program that has given him so much. Dan's relationship with Halloran and Abra are clearly a parallel to the sponsor-sponsee relationship.
Oh, I love that. I don't know if we made that exact connection to Dan being Abra's shining sponsor. That's great. Love that. I'll have to keep that in mind for our next conversations.
No, I agree. I mean, we talked about the sponsor-sponsee, and we talked about the mentor-mentee, and we just never drew those things specifically together.
Yeah, great. Felladao says, I recently read the Poppy War trilogy by R.F. Kuang, which is an interesting fantasy series based on the historical events of the Second Sino-Japanese War. The magic in this fantasy world is performed by shamans who are able to use sorcery in exchange for allowing gods or spirits to partially possess their bodies. This takes a heavy psychological toll on the shamans, as the gods always seek full possession to fully possess them, and once contacted can never be fully repelled. So the shamans are constantly battling alien impulses and voices in their heads. The only thing that can temporarily close this connection to the spirit world is opium, so many of the shamans end up doping themselves into catatonia whenever their magical abilities aren't required. It sets up a rather unique double addiction and sobriety dynamic. There's an addiction to magic, power, and victory in war, which must be paid for in the form of a never-ending spiritual hangover in which the gods constantly attack their minds, but the voices of the gods can be silenced by a heavy hit of opium, which of course creates its own more conventional addiction and all the consequences to one's health and daily functioning that one would expect. That's cool. Never heard of this, never read this. I think it's like you can already kind of see what they're doing here, and maybe a metaphor of like PTSD and needing to, I don't know. There's some really cool stuff there. I like that.
Yeah. I had never heard of this either. That sounds really interesting. I'll check that out. All right, House of Seven Paws says, my favorite is an Elmore Leonard's 1977 crime novel, Unknown Man number 89. As usual with Leonard, there's a smart-assed regular guy who gets mixed up in a crime plot as a side effect of his job. He's a process server. But around halfway through the book, he gets involved with a woman who, like him, has a drinking problem. They first meet in AA. They've separately fallen off the wagon. She reaches out to him for support when she's hit a bad low, and he realizes they both need to work on this. So they start going to a lot of meetings and making friends there and hanging out with everyone after meetings at the local pancake house. Our guy no longer cares about the crime plot at all. He's just doing this. He does eventually get back into the plot, of course, but this is a really lovely and humane interlude written from Leonard's personal experience since he had just started getting sober then. It's also hilarious because it totally confuses everyone else who's involved in the crime plot. The criminals have been following him around to suss out what he's up to, and they're like, what the fuck? Suddenly he's just crazy about Pancake? Who are these people he's meeting with all the time? Are they in on this? They just can't imagine that someone might have other priorities in life. And by the end of the book, it's not as if the heroes have had a religious conversation and totally changed. They're still drinking sometimes. They're just doing a lot better on average and looking out for each other. That's really cool. Man, I need to read more Elmore Leonard. I definitely do. That's one big hole in my reading.
Yeah, I'm not familiar with that. I have not read or have not even heard of this book, but it sounds very fun. I like this idea of, the other characters being perplexed by his disinterest in the plot that he is unknowingly part of. That's great.
Yeah, like I've seen the TV show Justified, which I believe is based off of an Elmore Leonard character, and I really like the show, so maybe I should just read the freaking books, and I haven't.
Yeah, we'll do it, man. Maybe we can put one on book club for next time.
Sure.
Yep. Warder Wannabe says, for the discussion answer, I'd have to add to the Eddie Dean crowd. The descriptions of how his addiction started, grew, then took over are very realistic, and although his recovery is certainly unconventional, it touches on all the major milestones: admitting the problem, dealing with the underlying issues, removing triggers, an entirely different world helps, and finding new purpose. A few thoughts about the book so far. Sorry, I'm going to skip your few thoughts about the book because it's not directly answering the discussion question, but thank you for your answer. Eddie Dean is a great character. I like the pointing out that he's literally following like the correct. I agree. I appreciated this about the Dark Tower, that like it's not like he just gets a magical sort of get out of addiction free card by virtue of intersecting with Roland's plot. He still has to go through withdrawal and then at various points be faced with temptation again and not go for that, So
Yeah.
great.
It's like in Lost when Charlie gets clean on heroin because there's no heroin on the island, except there suddenly is a lot of heroin.
Yep.
Yeah.
All right, and I'm going to quickly go through everybody else. Busy Dad 82 says Bubbles from The Wire and his desperate lows and eventual powerful recovery journey. Warped Core says Elliot Anderson from Mr. Robot, mixing drug use with mental illness struggles. No Park 690 says Fred Gallagher from Shameless and Nick Cage in Leaving Las Vegas as lovable drunks. Duran Longbeard says Barney from The Simpsons, an unappreciated long-term addiction struggle showing genuine pain. Yeah, they did, after like decades, decide to give Barney like an actual arc, didn't they? Baby Can You Dig Your Sam says Larry Underwood from The Stand as cosmic brother to Eddie Dean with his transformative journey. Steve Living Room says Cameron Diaz in Her Shoes and Sandra Bullock in 28 Days. I don't think I know either of those, unfortunately. Walking Dude 22 says The Scanner Darkly by Philip K. Dick, showing addiction literally splitting personality. I haven't read the book, but I love the movie. I love the movie so much.
I love that movie. Hey, who directed that movie?
I don't. Oh my God, you.
I'm just curious, Matt. Who?
No, I know. I'm not going to say it.
Was that our boy Richie?
It's a thing. It's a meme that I don't like Linklater, even though it's just that I really don't like one of his movies. Anyway,
it happens so often that Matt will say he really likes a movie, and then I'll get to be like, "Oh, who directed that one, Matt?"
Yeah, but I'm never gonna admit that I was wrong. So, Special Implement 715 says meta answer: we're all addicted to the tower. Yeah, love it.
Fair.
DJ Nedelko says Julian from Trailer Park Boys acting completely different when separated from his rum and coke. That sounds funny. Don't know what that is though. LesBox01 says Guard from the Tommyknockers, showing real world self-destructive patterns without supernatural elements. And finally, Puzzled Guava 1 says French Canadian show Empathy, featuring psychiatrist dealing with alcoholism while treating patients. Cool.
Yeah, those are great. Lots of answers. I guess fiction really depicts alcoholism and the struggle with it a lot.
Yeah.
It's very human thing.
Yeah.
All right, Matt. What is our question for next time?
Our question is, what's your favorite measles moment? And yeah.
We're going to have to explain that one a little bit.
Okay, fine. I'll explain it. So what we really mean by this is what I said earlier, this idea that, Stephen King in particular, he likes to do this thing where he muddles together the sacred and the profane and the magical and the mundane into a thing where it all just feels like a coherent world. He's not the only author who does that. So when we say measles moment, what we really mean is just like an idea or a moment or a thing in a story that feels sort of boundary crossing, feels sort of creative in that way where you're like, oh, I didn't know you could do that. Either with the magic system being, creative in that way, or I don't want to bias you too much, be open-minded about it. Like to see what people think about this.
Yeah. And it's okay that it's a bit silly, right? Sometimes they're a bit silly, but it still ultimately works.
Yeah.
All right, folks, that is going to do it for us this week. Next week on Dr. Sleep, we will continue with chapters 13 through 17 of the novel. Remember, that is going to be all of part 3 of the book. It's about 115 pages, so a little more than we're used to. So start reading right now.
That's right. Remember, you can reach us via email at flanaganswakepod19@gmail.com. And the best place to answer the discussion question is over on the subreddit at reddit.com/r/doofmedia. You can also follow us on Instagram at doofmedia, on Twitter at flanaganswake19, all the places you can find us if you want to follow us and keep up to date with things. And of course, YouTube is probably the best place to watch us, and watch our silly antics.
And if you want to watch our silly antics while repping the podcast, you can do that by going to doofmedia.myshopify.com, where you can get hats, shirts, cups, mugs, stickers, car stickers, all the whole thing. You can rep our podcast and help new people find it just by wearing stuff. We got an email from someone today, Matt, that says they were at a theater in Chicago watching Mike Flanagan's The Life of Chuck, and there were people sitting in the row in front of them that were Kingslingers and Flanagan's Wake fans that were talking about the podcast and maybe had some cool merch or something, and that's how they learned about us, and they follow us now and they listen to the podcast. So like, you can be the change you want to see in the world.
If that change is more people listening to this podcast, which I'm sure it is. So
it is, of course it is. And all that takes is a mug or a hat.
Yeah.
I keep saying hats. Do we have hats? I don't think we have hats.
I thought we have a hoodie, beanies, don't we?
We have beanies, yeah. But it's summertime, so that would be ridiculous.
That's true.
But anyway, there's tons of stuff. It's all really great. Go check it out at doofmedia.myshopify.com.
That's right. Also consider supporting us on Patreon at patreon.com/doofmedia. We'd really appreciate that. A bunch of cool bonus content over there. Huge backlog of it, and we update it regularly.
Yep. But if you cannot afford to be a member of Patreon or to buy merch, of course, we absolutely understand that. You can still help us out by just talking about us constantly with everyone you see. Just never stop. Please never stop. And you can, of course, help us out by leaving us rating and reviews on the podcast app of your choice. I don't think I have anything to read today, Matt. I think we have no new reviews to read today, unfortunately.
Okay.
But that's okay. There's just going to be consequences.
Yep.
And we'll tell you what those are momentarily.
Yeah, just, feel dread about it.
Yeah, just utmost dread. Feel enough dread that gets you to grab your phone right now, head to Apple, and hit 5 stars.
That's right.
All right, folks, that is going to do it for us this week. Remember, we'll be back with a longer section of pages next week, chapters 13 through 17 of Dr. Sleep. Until then, rest in peace, Mr. Flanagan. I stole your basketball glove. I stole it.